check out our streaming schedule for this week. We've got tons of content in terms of the NFL and college football, as we're going live just about every single day this week. So make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single moment where we go live. And now, on with our feature presentation. This player right here is Frank Corral, and at one point in time, he was one of the best kickers in the National Football League. He had his moments in the NFL as a member of the Los Angeles Rams, as the former third-round pick out of UCLA made an immediate impact as a rookie in 1978 by leading the league with 29 field goals made, receiving Pro Bowl and AP second-team All-Pro honors in the process. Then, in 1979, he scored all 9 points in the Rams' 9-0 win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFC Championship to send them to their first Super Bowl in franchise history, in a game that you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And aside from being one of the last players to ever hold both the punting and kicking duties at the same time, playing both positions at a time when the league was becoming highly specialized and each team had a designated punter and a designated kicker, as is the case with every team today, he also had some super clutch kicks, like his game winner to defeat the Atlanta Falcons in overtime during the final week of the 1980 season, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Frank Corral was an extremely versatile specialist and absolutely had his moments in the NFL. And if you want to learn more about some of those moments, not just of the main man in today's video, but of other players and coaches and teams throughout NFL history, then this is the place for you, because we talk about all things NFL history all the time with a new video and a new live stream every single day. So if you like that sort of stuff, then be sure to hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Thanks in advance for your support as we try and hit 70,000 subscribers. However, all careers must come to an end at some point. Sometimes, the player retires due to father time catching up to him, but that's only for a select few guys. For most players, they retire because someone tells them that they're not good enough anymore, and their performance falls sharply off a cliff. And in the case of the man you've been watching this whole time in Frank Corral, oddly enough, his career ended because of one of the biggest rock bands of all time. Despite being a Pro Bowl kicker in 1978 and starting off the 1981 season as strong as ever, Frank Corral never played another down in the NFL ever again after that 1981 campaign. And the reason why? The Rolling Stones. Seriously. Frank Corral certainly didn't get no satisfaction when it came to the Stones. And seeing as the Los Angeles Rams are playing the San Francisco 49ers tonight on Thursday Night Football, if you're watching as of this video getting released, this feels like a good time to talk about the game where Frank Corral's NFL career essentially came crashing down. All because of Mick Jagger and company forcing Corral to be stuck between a rock and a hard place. Because this is the story behind how the Rolling Stones, in essence, ended up ending an NFL career. Before I talk about the actual incident in question, we need some context to understand how the game itself was going, as well as just what the heck the Rolling Stones of all bands have to do with this. It's October 25th, 1981. It's Week 8 of the NFL season, and we have an absolutely critical NFC West battle on our hands at the halfway point between two in-state rivals in the Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. Plain and simple, this was a battle for first place in the division, and at a time when only 5 teams in each conference made the postseason, and when every division winner got a bye, while the wild cards had to play an extra round, that was big. The Niners entered this game at 5-2, looking like one of the hottest teams in football after rattling off 4 straight wins, while the Rams entered this one at 4-3, having bounced back nicely following an 0-2 start to win 4 of their last 5. These were 2 of the hottest and 2 of the best teams in the NFL on paper at this stage. So to win this game and take control of first place in the division at the halfway point of the season would be absolutely critical. It wasn't the national game that week since NBC had the doubleheader, but make no mistake about it. Halfway through the season, and this was one of the biggest battles of the year. And so far in this one, this was living up to the hype, as it was looking like an extremely even matchup. On one hand, the the Niners have the upper hand in the passing game, with their defensive line sacking Rams quarterback Pat Hayden 6 times, and with Joe Montana throwing for 287 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions, and posting a passer rating of 107.2, with wide receiver Dwight Clark having over 100 yards to his name. On the other hand, the Rams had more total yards, thanks to Pat Hayden throwing for over 300 on the day, and thanks to a solid ground game, with the Rams outgaining the Niners 145-60 in rushing yardage, and with San Francisco barely averaging 2 yards per carry, with an anemic ground game that got nothing going all day long. Even though the Niners led the entire way, thanks to a 14-0 lead after the first quarter, the Rams weren't going away quietly into the night, and entering the fourth quarter, they only found themselves down by 3 points, trailing 20-17. And when the game is that close, and is within 1 possession, but especially within 3 points, you already know who it's going to come down to and what it's going to come down to. It's going to come down to the leg of Frank Corral. Rams kicker, punter, and special teams jack of all trades Frank Corral, who made a chip shot 25-yard field goal earlier in the second quarter to get the Rams on the board, was going to have not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 more chances to split the uprights. He was going to get 4 chances to make 1 field goal for the tie and 2 field goals for the win. And I want to put into some perspective before going any further about what it was like for this man right here, how easy this should have been to do on paper. Obviously, to expect a kicker to go 5 for 5, unless these kicks are from inside 30 yards, is a really tall order. It's a tall order even in today's NFL, let alone more than 4 decades ago in 1981. However, the average field goal percentage in 1981 was just a tick under 66%. So the average kicker was hitting 2 out of every 3 kicks. And as Meatloaf said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. You do that, and you're 3 for 5. So even though you're below the league average, you win the game. And for the men who've been watching this whole time in Frank Corral, this really shouldn't have been an issue for him at all, because he's been money this season thus far. He had been perfect over the last 2 weeks, and during week 6, in the Rams' thrilling 37-35 come-from-behind victory over the Falcons, Frank Corral went 3 for 3, including the game-winning field goal at the end of the fourth quarter from 25 yards out. Thus far in 1981, Corral was 10 for 12, hitting on 83% of his kicks. Among kickers to attempt at least 10 field goals thus far, 7 weeks into the 1981 season, Corral ranked 4th in accuracy, only behind Rafael Septien of the Dallas Cowboys, Rick Danmeyer of the Minnesota Vikings, and Jan Stenerud of the Green Bay Packers. Corral was that good and was that accurate. So to ask him to make one measly kick to tie the game and go 2 for 5 at minimum, or 2 kicks to win the game and go 3 for 5 at minimum, should not be a tall order. It would be like asking prime Tiger Woods to make a 2-putt to win the Masters, and he's sitting 2 feet out. However, there was one thing working against Frank Corral on this day, and that was the fact that Candlestick Park, despite hosting an NFL game, was barely an NFL field on this day. Because just a few days before, there was a little something taking place at the venue, and that thing was this thing right here. A 2-day event on Saturday, October 17th, and Sunday, October 18th, known as the Rolling Stones 1981 American Tour. Yep, that's right. I don't know what it was with stadiums deciding to destroy their fields in the 80s by having these giant rock concerts in the middle of football season with no real protection for the field whatsoever. Because we saw Cleveland do this a few years later with a Pink Floyd concert, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. However, the Rolling Stones were in the middle of a career resurgence in 1981, and were right on the heels of one of their signature songs, Start Me Up. The show sold out everywhere it went, and it helped cement the band's status as one of the great touring bands and one of the great live bands that will be a mainstay in the rock scene for years to come, with the band still selling out venues to this day more than 40 years later. And because of the band's popularity, a lot of these concerts took place in stadiums, with a ton of NFL stadiums getting in on the action. including the Astrodome where the Houston Oilers play, Rich Stadium where the Buffalo Bills play, the Kingdome where the Seattle Seahawks play, and Jack Murphy Stadium where the San Diego Chargers play. But whereas a lot of those stadiums were AstroTurf or had synthetic surfaces, Candlestick Park was grass. And when grass gets destroyed, it gets really destroyed. And this concert right here absolutely decimated the field, to the point where despite the game taking place in sunny conditions, it looked like it was taking place on a mud pit. One writer said that the tour by the band a few days ago left the surface at Candlestick looking more like a soggy wheat field than grass. The grass was high, heavy, and damp, the sod chunky, and the traction for kickers, consequently, was terrible. In fact, it was so bad that during warm-ups, Frank Corral slipped on the surface while trying to kick a football. So he had to borrow someone else's cleat to plant his foot with, which is always a good sign when you're a kicker. You've got to borrow someone else's shoe because your shoe wasn't good enough because the surface is that crappy. You might be asking why the field was so bad. Well, remember that this was a grass stadium that was home to not just the 49ers, but also the San Francisco Giants of Major League Baseball. So when the grounds crew covered the newly sodded infield with plywood, all of the moisture was trapped inside, meaning that the ground stayed wet. And this meant that by the end of the game, because of this concert right here involving the Stones, you had tons of holes and patches in the ground, making the field look almost unplayable. Both teams bemoaned the status of the field, with Corral saying afterwards that it was the worst field he ever played on, and it was filled with holes, and 49er kicker Ray Wersching echoing those thoughts about it being a really bad field. And it wasn't just the kickers who complained about the field condition because of the concert. Nolan Cromwell said that the bad field gives kickers no ability to plant their leg firmly, and Jack Youngblood said that the field was mushy and soft, which makes sense considering all the moisture that was trapped inside. And it wasn't just that the field was mushy and a wreck to play on, but the field wasn't even maintained or cleaned up properly, as after the concert, the grounds crew just didn't bother to do its job, with Corral finding a ton of buds out there. For those who don't know what a bud is, it's a marijuana cigarette, which is known today most commonly as a joint. Always a good sign when you're playing an NFL game and the field is covered in joints and is super mushy and is littered with holes because of a concert that took place during the season that trapped all of the moisture on the playing surface, and in particular, where Corral was kicking these field goals. So when it came to this man right here in Frank Corral, because the Rolling Stones painted it black, or more aptly, really brown instead of painting it green, it was going to be a difficult assignment. Still, he just needed to make one field goal to tie it, and 2 field goals to win it. There was no way that the specialist, and arguably one of the most accurate kickers in football at the time, was going to screw this up, right? The first of these kicks, okay, that's a miss. That's not good, but he's got more chances to make it. The second of these kicks, okay, that's also a miss. Starting to get a bit concerned for obvious reasons, but he's still got 2 more chances. The third of these kicks are from a close distance too. Oh crap. Okay, that's 3 misses. That's not good. That is really not good. Corral had only missed 2 kicks over the course of the first 7 weeks of the 1981 season, and here he was in this one, already missing 3 field goals before the game ended. Still, despite all of that, and despite Frank Corral seemingly forgetting how to kick a football, with his talents being sucked out of him like it's Space Jam with the Monstars, the Rams have a chance, with about 13 seconds left in the game, to tie it. It's going to come down to the leg of Frank Corral one more time. He's got a 45-yarder to send the game into overtime. Yes, he's missed 3 kicks already, but he can't possibly miss a 4th. He just can't. He can't possibly miss what would be his 4th kick of the game, and you're actually kidding me. He missed it. He missed it while he left. He genuinely missed 4 kicks in one game. The man who was 10 for 12 entering now had somehow tripled his missed field goal total, giving the Niners a 20-17 win in absolutely stunning fashion. and giving the Niners the win in a game that, on any other day, the Rams take. The bad field because of the Rolling Stones destroyed this man. It genuinely destroyed this man. He was the first to admit that he wasn't trying to use the field as an excuse, but he said that while discussing how awful the field was, and he talked about it a ton, so it definitely weighed on his mind considering everything we've been over. Frank Corral, in the biggest game of the season, against arguably his team's biggest rival, just faltered and was the GOAT. He went from an accurate kicker to a laughingstock and a joke in the span of one game. And despite being one of the most accurate kickers in football near the midway point of the season, everything changed after that game against the 49ers. Kicking is such a funny thing, because when you're a kicker in the NFL, a ton of what you do is based on confidence and momentum. And once you got the yips and you start to struggle, it is really hard to bounce back. 7 weeks into the season, Frank Corral was the fourth most accurate kicker in football, hitting over 83% of the time. By the time the season ended, his field goal percentage had dropped to 65%, well below the league-wide average. The man hit on just 50% of his kicks from the time of the 49er game to the end of the 1981 season. And Corral was so bad that he never played another down in the NFL again after the 1981 season, getting cut before the start of the 1982 campaign. The Rolling Stones legitimately killed his career. The turning point in his career was that Stones concert that wrecked the field and made it impossible to kick and shattered his confidence. Before that concert, Frank Corral was a beast. After that concert, he was a burden. And not only was the game between these two teams behind me right here a turning point in the career of Frank Corral, but it was also a negative turning point for the Los Angeles Rams in general. They were one of the most formidable teams throughout the entire 1970s, and in 1980 they made the playoffs. But after this game, everything fell apart. The Rams started the season off with a 4-3 record, but they ended the year 6-10, in that they only won 2 of their final 9 games the rest of the way after that 49er loss. While the Niners would really have a phenomenal season and would go on to win their first Super Bowl in franchise history in the game that you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. The Rams would then finish the 1982 strike-shortened season with a 2-7 record, with Ray Malavasi getting fired at the end of the season. So after that Niner game, the Rams won just 4 of their next 18 games over the course of those 2 seasons. Not really a lot of mixed emotions for Rams fans. It was a lot of bad emotions after that game and in the ensuing 2 years. The Rolling Stones had played their part in NFL history before, as nearly a quarter century later, they would do the Super Bowl 40 halftime show in February of 2006, which, while not good, at least didn't wreck the field or destroy any NFL careers. But when it came to what happened with the Stones in 1981, and this man right here in Frank Corral, it's amazing how much things would be different if that concert never happened and the field was in good condition. Does Frank Corral ever lose his confidence? And does he stay on as the Rams kicker and punter going forward? Do the Rams win that game with Corral kicking on a normal field, meaning that they might not collapse down the stretch, and meaning that the 49ers might not be as good and might not win the NFC as a result, or at the very least, not have home field advantage throughout the playoffs? It's an interesting butterfly effect that comes as a result of this game, which got its result, at least in part, from a Rolling Stones concert. Because on this day in 1981, thanks to a terrible field, just like sympathy for the devil, there was sympathy for Frank Corral and the game and the concert that all but ended his career in the National Football League. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.